Good afternoon, everybody. It's Michael Jr. here. I've just a few cases today. I'll start with a case of a 71-year-old female with a lesion in the vagina, which clinically was thought to be granulation tissue. All we got was this little sample, which already on low power you can see that this is not granulation tissue, that this is most likely a neoplasm, a very cellular neoplasm, very dark staining, pretty monotonous, round cell proliferation with high mitotic activity and of course kind of high-grade morphological features. There is not much to see besides that, except that in some areas necrosis also another feature of high-grade malignancy, and I think some small areas had a little different appearance, perhaps here a little bit clear cell morphology, perhaps, maybe I'm imagining it, but I thought it looks a little bit like a clear cell neoplasm. So what would you do? Of course you should start with, so we have a high-grade malignant undifferentiated tumor, and what you should do is to start with some reasonable immunohistochemical analysis. We are in the vagina, in epithelial organ, so let's start with cytokeratins. And you can see this is cytokeratins AE1, AE3. Basically all cells are diffusely positive. Then, since we are in GYN tract, you want to test whether this is coming from GYN tract, so you can do PAX8, which is probably the most used marker of gynecological origin, but of course not completely specific for GYN. And we see strong diffuse nuclear expression in the tumor, so could this be from GYN? Definitely. There's also one more recent marker for GYN origin, and that is SOX17, which is, according to probably 2 or 3 studies right now, should be even more specific and more useful than PAX8 for GYN origin. So SOX17, also you see diffuse strong expression. One more thing for which SOX17 is good is endothelium and vascular neoplasms. You can see here the endothelium stains nicely as well, and it's a nuclear marker, so it's easy to read it. So SOX17 is also a pretty good vascular marker, apart from being a good marker for GYN origin. Of course, we did a bunch of other immunostains. We did S100 protein, GATA3, TTF1. We also did HNF1 beta because of the focal clear cell features. It's shown here. HNF1 beta should be positive in clear cell adenocarcinomas, but it was negative. Also, napsin A should be positive in clear cell carcinomas of GYN tract, or especially of endometrium, but it was negative too. Anyway, so we have a high-grade malignant neoplasm with a diffuse cytokeratin expression, SOX17 and PAX8 expression. So it appears it could be poorly differentiated carcinoma of GYN origin. Is there any other way to confirm this? With immunohistochemistry, there is one more option as far as I know, and then that is testing for MMR proteins. We did all 4 MMR proteins, MSH2, MSH6, MLH1, all were retained, but PMS2, you can see a nice loss in the tumor cells and positive internal control in the endothelium, so PMS2 was lost. Afterwards, we did the molecular testing, which was partially unsuccessful. We couldn't test for mutations, so DNA analysis was unsuccessful, but we detected microsatellite instability, high microsatellite instability, and methylation analysis suggested that this is a adenocarcinoma of the endometrium. So it kind of all fits together nicely. So we eventually called it undifferentiated or poorly differentiated adenocarcinoma of the endometrium with MMR deficiency or MSI instability. So actually the patient, I don't know if in Czech Republic we use already immune checkpoint inhibitors for these tumors. Is it standard of care? Yeah, so because of the MMR deficiency and high microsatellite instability, she would be candidate for immune checkpoint inhibitors. Okay, next case was an adult patient with a tumor on the fingers. Don't remember the exact age. I didn't write it down, but adult patient. So let's start on scanning magnification. You can see this is a dermal-based neoplasm, multinodular, and myxoid. I'll try a different slide without bubbles. Not much better, but doesn't matter that much. And so the nodules consist of this, again, very myxoid, hypocellular proliferation of somewhat bland ovoid spindled cells. There was no mitotic activity. And then you have areas such as this that resemble schwannoma to me a little bit, some neurogenic tumor. So in between the myxoid nodules, you see kind of like neurogenic differentiation. Also here, schwannoma-like areas. And so you can form some differential diagnosis. So this could be some myxoid neurogenic tumor, perhaps. The clue is again this interlobular, more solid proliferations. Perhaps extraskeletal myxoid chondrosarcoma could look like this as well. And perhaps intramuscular myxoma, but this is not intramuscular really. So maybe cutaneous myxoma, but somewhat multicellular. Anyway, we should start with some, again, reasonable immunohistochemical panel. So I would start, because of the neurogenic touch to it, I would start with S100 protein, which shows striking diffuse positivity in the entire tumor. Whenever you have S100 positivity, it's good to go for SOX10 to test whether both S100 and SOX10 are positive, because it kind of narrows the differential if they are not. But here again, all the cells are SOX10 diffusely positive. So this seems to be either melanocytic lesion or neurogenic lesion because of the morphology, definitely more in the neurogenic direction. You could do HND45, it would be negative. And so these tumors actually with this morphology and this immunoprofile are called currently dermal nerve sheath myxomas. You can think of them as like a myxoid variant of schwannoma. Interestingly, I did also EMA, and these tumors are supposed to be, it's supposed to be okay that these tumors are focally EMA positive. And this case was actually pretty strongly diffusely positive for EMA. And I think my father described these tumors as hybrid schwannoma perineurioma in the past, occurring on the fingers. So I think this is the same tumor, just today it's called dermal nerve sheath myxoma. Doesn't really matter, it's a benign lesion, but if it's incompletely excised, it can recur. Okay, next case was a 15-year-old boy with a tumor in his jaw. And we got this pretty hypocellular, fibrous, partially myxoid tumor. Some squamous epithelium on the surface. Otherwise quite unremarkable morphology, except for one more feature which I'll show you. So kind of bland spindle cells, myxofibrous stroma. And then what's quite important for the diagnosis are these little islands of, this is epithelium. If you would stain cytokeratins, this would stain positive. This is thought to be remnants of odontogenic epithelium. And I believe this fits, here is more of it. This fits for odontogenic myxoma. It's a relatively common benign odontogenic tumor of the jaws, the mandible and maxilla. And recently the molecular background was kind of investigated. They didn't find any fusions, as is common in these days, but they found a very characteristic copy number alteration profile with near haploid genomic background and like retention of specific chromosomes in most cases. I don't recall which chromosomes are retained, but you can find it in the literature, papers in the AGSP from this year. Here more odontogenic epithelium. This is in the context of myxofibrous lesion of the jaws. This is the clue for the diagnosis of odontogenic myxoma. So tumors with loss of almost complete loss of heterozygosity. Next case, this was an older adult patient with a lesion in his cardiac area, in his or her stomach. I don't remember the gender, doesn't matter. So you can see cardiac type mucosa, and underneath this, again, ugly looking, quite pleomorphic neoplasm. It's hard to read mitoses, but there were many. I have one more slide, I believe. Looks similar. Any ideas what this could be? Or any differential diagnosis? Okay, maybe this is better.
High-grade lymphoma or something.
Okay, yes, high-grade lymphoma definitely should be in the broader differential, although this doesn't look really round, cell, uniform, but definitely would not be a mistake to do some CD45 or something like that. Other markers you would do? Zahra, do you have suggestions? In the stomach, epithelial organ?
CD117.
CDX2.
Yeah, CD117 or DOG1, definitely good idea to do in the stomach, of course. Somewhat spindle cell morphology, so you could go for some malignant gist. I think I have it somewhere here, but it was negative. I don't want to be finding it. But cytokeratins, right? So we do cytokeratins, and they are negative. CDX2, you could do CDX2 for stomach, but it's better to start with broader markers like cytokeratins. If cytokeratins are negative, CDX2 is unlikely to be positive. Actually, here I have CD45. So there are some lymphocytes, but the tumor cells seem to be negative. And of course, the usual victim, melanoma. Could it be melanoma? Absolutely. So US100 protein, but it's negative too. Can it be melanoma still? Yeah, of course. It always can be melanoma. So SOX10 seems to me to be the best. From the more specific markers, this is the longest retained marker. So you see some focal SOX10 positivity, but not much. This is not enough to call something melanoma, but there is some positivity. HNB45 was negative. You can do PRAME. PRAME is very unspecific marker, but it's very sensitive. If this was negative, it's very unlikely for it to be melanoma, but we have diffuse positivity for PRAME. And then other immunohistochemical markers you can use are BRAF and RAS. because many melanomas are caused by BRAF mutations and RAS mutations. This is BRAF, which is negative. And you can use the RAS immunohistochemical stain, which detects the most common NRAS mutations. It doesn't detect all NRAS mutations, but just the most common ones. And look, it's diffusely strongly positive. Then we found out the patient has a history of melanoma, so we didn't even do molecular. This is undifferentiated melanoma, most likely with NRAS mutation. Yeah, always, when you have high-grade neoplasm anywhere, just always think about melanoma, no matter how it stains. Even if this was diffusely cytokeratin positive or synaptophysin positive, it can still be melanoma. So 19-year-old boy, tumor on his thigh, that's my last case. But perhaps, for me at least, the most interesting, the most beautiful. It's a benign tumor, so we can call it beautiful. So again, somewhat multinodular appearance, somewhat mix of fibrous stroma. When I saw this for the first time, I was pretty sure this is ossifying fibromyxoid tumor without ossification because of this fibromyxoid stroma and kind of reticular or cord-like arrangement of the tumor cells, but it's not ossifying fibromyxoid tumor. What helps here are these cleft-like spaces and multinodular arrangement of these tumors, which is almost always present there. These tumors have no ossification and always have this bland spindle cell morphology. And this is in the upcoming WHO classification. This will be a newly included entity, PRRX, rearranged fibroblastic tumors. This is the largest series of these cases from, this is in press now in AGSP. And so these tumors are completely benign. They're more often in younger patients, and they are in superficial soft tissues, typically some extremities or shoulders, trunk sometimes. And the morphology is quite uniform. You can see on low power these cleft-like spaces. Sometimes the tumor, parts of the tumor protrude into the vessels. You can also sometimes see infiltrative growth around adnexal structures. Actually, I think this is my case, which I contributed. This was a case from the shoulder, the young female, and morphology is very similar to what we see in our case. Looks a little bit maybe like ossifying fibromyxoid tumor, solitary fibrous tumor. Often you have these hyalinized vessels there, which I think was also in our case here. And what's pretty helpful, or very helpful, I would say, is quite frequent expression of S100 and SOX10, but not in a diffuse fashion as you would see in, let's say, schwannoma or neurogenic tumor, but you often have a very focal expression of one or the other, sometimes both. In this study, they found it in 50% of cases. Some previous studies found it in 1/3 of cases. I personally have seen 7 cases of this entity, and I've seen it in all of them. I suspect that maybe some of the pathologists didn't look very closely because it's sometimes very focal. Look at this case. This is from the tumor I showed you, and this is S100 protein. It's mostly completely negative, but if you look carefully, you will find small areas where some of the tumor cells are positive. This is really, really focal, but I think this is in the tumor cells. The other cases I've seen were usually more prominent. I didn't do SOX10 here. Of course, it's hard to diagnose this tumor with certainty without molecular, but the morphology is actually pretty consistent across cases. I'm just still learning it myself, so I had to use molecular to be certain. So PRRX, rearranged fibroblastic tumor, new entity in the upcoming WHO for soft tissue tumors. So this is all from my side. Thank you, and I gotta leave. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Michael, the senior, the previous speaker, I would like to praise him that he calls interesting tumor as beautiful. I like calling them beautiful because they are beautiful, not only interesting. The same, I like when there is excellent wine, not to call it only good, but beautiful as well, yeah. So, yeah, two categories I call beautiful. Okay, I'm going to show you various pathologies, starting from vulva. Okay, this vulvar lesion, yeah, you see it's cauliflower-like proliferation. You see at the bottom, there are these small areas, especially these ones. There is this beaks-like proliferation over here. Yeah. So I think this squamous cell lesion is malignant, yeah. Superficially, with superficial macroinvasions, yeah. When now I will show you P53 staining. Yeah, the P53 staining very nicely shows positivity of peripheral layer of the cells. Yeah, look at it, which makes it diagnostic of differentiated type of WIN that is independent of HPV pathway. Yeah, but it's not all. Let's look to this lesion again at the beginning. Yeah, there is something more. Look at it. What is this? Clear cell proliferation here. Do you see it? It's different from the tumor. This tumor you see has only squamous cell proliferation with mitosis, but this part of the tumor at the side of it has such amazing clear cell proliferation. I will show cytokeratin, I think 7, which very nicely shows the pathology. Look, cytokeratin 7, yeah, which is typically negative in squamous cell differentiation. The biggest part of that lesion is negative, but at the shoulders of the lesion you see very nice positivity of this lesion. Yeah. Has anybody suggestion of what is it? It is statmin. Statmin is interesting marker which it stains all dysplastic cells in vulva and cervix. You see, dysplastic here is the peripheral layer that is P53 positive, yeah? And the same positive are these lesions here, yeah? Is there any suggestion what is this?
Is this Paget or Paget?
Yeah, it's Paget disease. It's Paget disease in growing into squamous cell carcinoma, which is caused by p53 in situ lesions. That means the squamous cell carcinoma arose from p53 pathway with invasions, and from the side, at the same time, there is different pathology. That means Paget disease that must usually start from anogenital glands in the vulva, yeah, and it's what is the message of this lesion? Yeah, message is that if it would be only that squamous cell carcinoma, what you have on the vulva and what you excise all invasive lesions. But in Paget disease, it can proliferate long way from the lesion. That means the vulvectomy must be much wider, and you could even see on the borders, because the Paget disease is sometimes afflicting most of the vulva. Yeah, so that it's very important to mapping the lesion and looking on the peripheral parts of it. Otherwise, the lesion will start to outgrow it. Yeah. Okay. Here I have another. It's patient having many lesions over the body. It is the lesion on the neck. I'm sorry, I didn't get block. I got on the H&E slide, which is not of best quality. And here the patient, it was a young adolescent patient. He had more such lesions over the back, even lower part of the back. And in addition, on extremity, the patient had these lesions, which is what?
Epidermoid cyst?
What?
Epidermoid cyst?
Yeah, and it is a epidermoid cyst, and what does it mean with the previous lesion? Je tam ten nukleotide fibroma. Mám ho tady nebo? Jo. Again, I've already showed you in the past this paper of mine, which is eternal and cited till now. It's nucleotide fibroma, but if it is nucleotide fibroma, it's usually lesions of the old people and not associated with what? When you see epidermal cysts and nucleotide fibroma, the patient must have Gardner syndrome. It's specific. Yeah, in this patient, we asked the surgeon what is in the large bowel, and he was very surprised that we knew that he's got adenomatosis of large bowel. Yeah, but in old people, the nucleotide fibroma alone is not associated with Gardner syndrome. Yeah, but this lesion in old patients is very often associated with diabetic fibrosis of many organs, of breast and so on and so on. In the next seminar, I will show one case with widespread fibrosis associated with nucleotide fibroma. Yeah? This paper should be known for everybody not doing soft tissue. Okay, next case. You see, it was a huge tumor of retroperitoneum. It weighed 2 kilograms, and you see the tumor doesn't ingrow into the kidney. It was excising a part of the kidney, And when you see this morphology, and the morphology was the same everywhere around the kidney, what would be a suggestion?
Myxoid liposarcoma.
Myxoid liposarcoma is definitely the first to think about, yeah. Perinephric myxoid. But there is this new entity, no, relatively new. It's 15 years old now, but mostly forgotten. Yeah. It's benign lesion, very often of large dimensions. When you do genetics, you always find nothing. Yeah, it's called pseudotumor, but I don't believe it's pseudotumor. I think it's tumor, benign tumor. Just we don't know any translocation so far because the panels we have at hand are not big enough. Yeah, but still, it's benign lesion, often very of large dimensions. I recommend you to read this paper because it's impressive. Yeah. This paper is going to appear in American Surgical Pathology. Yeah. You do not see any mitosis there, any atypism, whatever, yeah. But still, not knowing it, you can make big mistake. You can make really big mistakes. Different block. You see even lipomatous tissue here, so that the mistake of myxoid liposarcoma or well-differentiated myxoid liposarcoma is very big danger of it, yeah. And even morphology of this tumor looks the same. It looks like the stroma is crushed by some mixer, yeah. When you get into eyes, you can even have suspicion of this lesion, yeah. We have several cases of it, and all soft tissue pathologists should know this pitfall. Yeah. Yeah. Here I have a skin lesion. Skin lesion, and the patient had many such lesions over the body. And you see it's associated with hyperplasia of sebaceous glands. And there is a proliferation of stroma as well, but the stroma is centered on these sebaceous glands. I showed you several cases in previous seminars which look very similarly, but are entirely different. This lesion is really Birt-Hogg-Debye syndrome. It's a syndrome that is associated with renal tumors, especially the oncocyte-like, oncocytoma-like renal tumors. And this epithelial proliferation is retinoblastoma protein positive. But there is another trichodiscoma-like lesions, which is usually spindle cell lipoma, benign, which makes sebaceous glands to proliferate. These are usually solitary lesions that are looking like that, but it's not that, yeah? I don't have footprint here. Next time I will show you it, yeah? So, this is the real Birt-Hogg-Debye syndrome with tumor of the kidney. Again, it's sebaceous proliferation and fibroma-like proliferation around these epithelial structures, which are retinoblastoma protein 1 positive. And similar looking lesions, but entirely different, is spindle cell lipoma with sebaceous proliferation. And spindle cell lipoma is typically retinoblastoma protein negative. There is a deletion of it. Here again, it is a patient with lesion on the face. The patients had hundreds of lesions over the face and shoulders. And beside that, the patient had kidney tumor, which we could not review, but it was described by a pathologist as epithelioid angiomyolipoma. I just think that the pathologist made mistake. It was not epithelioid angiomyolipoma, it was oncocytic epithelioid tumor like typically for this tumor. It is another example of Bill-Hogg-Debye syndrome. Yeah? In this case, I don't see any spindle cell proliferation looking like spindle cell lipoma like I showed you in past seminars. Yeah, it's a nasal lesion. It was 2 times 3 centimeters big. Look at it. And in my opinion, this is very often diagnosed by a referring pathologist as well differentiated adenocarcinoma. But what you see here is either ceremocinous hamartoma, like here, or REACH, respiratory adenomatoid proliferation. But that ceremocinous hamartoma, like you see in the middle of it, we know that these lesions are having genetic aberrations, especially some of them fusions. I'm sure it's tumor, and we call this tumor is not recognized in WHO classification. We call it tumoriform ceremocinous hamartoma. Yeah? And the hamartoma we give in apostrophe. Yeah? So we don't think it's hamartoma, it's a benign tumor. Yeah? Look how big it is. Yeah? And we have prepared publication of these big lesions of the nose. Yeah, here I have ovarian tumor. It was quite large. I do not remember precisely how large it was. You can easily see here. This is part of the lesion which is easy to diagnose. It is colloid struma of ovary. But beside that, there is this. What is this? You see it. It looks like carcinoid, but the carcinoid itself. Okay, I'm going to take this. You see this carcinoid lesion is producing these colloid-like structures looking like thyroid. Yeah. Here is another H&E slide from the same lesion. Very nicely you see that neuroendocrine-like proliferation. Yeah, the same patient, yeah, with the struma. You can still see the struma and something in between. I have thyroglobulin here. you see that these eosinophilic things in the carcinoid-like proliferation are thyroglobulin positive. That means they really have something to see with thyroid. Yeah. The same is synaptophysin, but the synaptophysin is positive in these cohorts. Would you have suggestion for diagnosis?
Stromal carcinoma.
Yeah, this ovarian stromal carcinoid, which is unique type to ovary. It's not seen anywhere else. We have even a couple of malignant cases that grew into undifferentiated mucinous positive lesions, and they are very often arising in addition to ovarian struma. This is an amazing case. Lesion of vulva. Another case, I don't remember the age of the patient. Do you see this? Does it look like some other tumor elsewhere? I will help you. The lesion is retinoblastoma protein negative. That means deficient of retinoblastoma protein. And does not these lesions look like, there is spindle cell lipoma, but there is spindle cell lipoma of soft tissues of the neck called fat-free. Spindle cell lipoma without fat, yeah? And what was amazing in this case, there was one component here, you see it here, and it looks like this. Some cases in the past that will look like that. You see the undifferentiated component is sharply differentiated from the spindle cell. Yeah? These were published in the past as malignization of angiofibroma of vulva. I have different suggestion. The spindle cell part is fat-free lipoma-like lesion, and what you see here is fat-free pleomorphic lipoma. That means it's perfectly benign lesion. We have several cases of this which behave so far in a benign way. Here's another block from the same patient, and it looks like that, yeah? Look how atypical it is, yeah? And in some of them, some of the parts you can even suggest incipient lipoblasts like arising, yeah? So I'm sure that in the past, all these malignization of angiofibromas of vulva is this, and it's perfectly benign lesion. Yeah, it's very important thing. We have several cases, and it's not as rare as one would think. Yeah. When I have this lesion, I will show you something from the same pathology. Tumor of the vulva. Looking like that. I'm going to show you retinoblastoma protein in this case. And interestingly, retinoblastoma protein is positive in the large, especially in the large cells, but it's negative in most of the cells. Do you see it? It's hybrid positive, as though part of them still produce that, but most of them are negative, yeah? The whole tumor, which was quite big, looked like that. MIB1 positivity is 100% of the cells. 100% positive, yeah? But you should notice how well circumscribed it is at the periphery. So I don't think, yeah, it is epithelium, yeah. I think that is very similar to what we saw in previous case, yeah. Still we call it most probably benign proliferation, and sometimes in the literature there is described so-called angiomyofibromatous polyps, which are bizarre, and I think it's the same thing as here. I think that you can even see the lipoma-like differentiation in it, yeah? That means this is probably a huge atypical pleomorphic lipoma. You see lipoblast-like differentiation here, yeah? And I have here one of these polyps of vagina and vulva, which are well known from the 60s. You see, it's very similar. Yeah? In this case, small part of that looks benign, but I still think it's the same thing as the previous two cases I showed you. Yeah? It was published in the 60s, it was recognized as pitfall, and again, I will show you retinoblastoma protein in this case. And again, you can see that some of them are negative, but some of them, especially the multinucleated, are positive. Yeah. This paper was published a few months ago. Yeah. They took these fibroepidural stromal polyps and tried LB1 immunohistochemistry, and they found that part of them are positive, part of them negative. When you see fibroepithelial polyp, what does it mean? That there is epithelium, there is stroma, which is everywhere. I still think it's the same pathology as in the previous case I showed you. Yeah? Just do not overdiagnose them as malignant cases as sarcoma. Yeah? And now I'm going to show you two cases which you will not find in literature. Yeah? Case one is this, and these tumors arise in salivary glands of newborns, and they are always located in hypopharynx. And you see there is only these cystic-like lesions with inward proliferations. Still, there is some neoplastic stroma, very incipient spindle cell spindling. You see it, for example, here, yeah? There's some spindling here. In another case I will show you, it's a case I got from Brazil. Again, newborn, nasopharynx, and I think we see here entirely the same thing. Yeah? The first case we got from Karolinska in Stockholm. Now we are now asking some more slides to do some staining. And I ask you, all of you who hear me, if you have some similar case, we are just now finishing publication of 12 cases of so-called salivary enlarged tumor, and we think it is the incipient part of it. First thing is these cystic-like structures, and second on that is that spindle cell proliferation, which you can see here. But in these two cases, it's very incipient, not seen. And usually, this stroma is retinoblastoma protein deficient, and these epithelial structures are positive. I speak about this tumor. It was already described 30 years ago, but very few people ever saw it. We have 12 cases of it. It's always inborn, always in children. You see, so we have one case which was excised at the age of 4, but the patient had the tumor since being born. Yeah, and you see here the same cystic-like structures. You see, it's very similar to what I showed you. Yeah, and then there is a spindle cell stroma, which is not well featured here. And the authors, Rosai and Denner, they thought it's spindle cell stroma like in pleomorphic adenomas of salivary glands, so that they call it salivary enlarged tumor. We think it's unique tumor, not looking as different. In these 12 cases, we just now about to report, we have 2 cases that change into sarcoma. Yeah, it can be even malignant. Yeah, we don't have long follow-up. In spite of, I saw the case in consultation from Slovenia 20 years ago, but still it can regrow as sarcoma rising. Yeah, it's a very new thing. And we try to do genetics on these tumors because the retinoblastoid protein deficiency is very conspicuous, but we didn't find any genetic change on the retinoblastoma proteins. So there must be some epigenetic change that we cannot diagnose by genetic means, just by immunohistochemistry. Yes, I have here another lesion that should be known by everybody doing soft tissues, because without that, soft tissue pathology is stacked here. Yeah? It's quite cellular lesion. Yeah? One could even say it might be low-grade malignancy or whatever. And the only positivity is the chemical. You do whatever we try, you can try whatever. SRD protein, cytokeratin, all of them is negative. The only positivity is CD138. It is the only positive staining. Real suggestions? It's called, I don't like the name. I think it's so different from the name. It's called cellular type of neurocystioma. It looks like something peripheral nerve sheath, but I think the name is very silly. It's not neurocystioma, but it exists. It can be myxoid, it can be non-myxoid. Still, the only positive you see is 100 CD138, yeah, and it can look very disquiet. It can look like melanoma, whatever, yeah. Just you find no positivity on it. It's a sort of base kit of diagnosis, but it really exists, yeah. Yeah, and here I have a case I showed you another one in one of the first seminars, but here I have another case. It's ovarian lesion. And the main tumor cell type looks perfectly in line with granulosa cell tumor, yeah? But it's not all. When you look at it more carefully, in some areas they are grouped eosinophilic cells. Maybe have second slide. Yeah. What these cells are? Do you see eosinophilic cells here? Yeah? When you make albumin staining, it's positive. Yeah. Sometimes you see even bile in it. It's hepatoid, not hepatoid, it's hepatic differentiation in granulosa cell tumor. It was described by Robert Scully, several cases. I will send you a paper of it. Yeah. So at first it was called hepatoid, but it's not hepatoid, it's really hepatic. Because we have a case that has even bile in it. Yeah. So, but important for that is that it makes the diagnosis granulosa cell tumor for certain, because I never saw it in any other case in human pathology. Yeah? We have three or four cases of this. Amazing, different look at it. Next time I will bring you look at it here. So the granulosa cell tumor is hepatic differentiation. During the communism, we used to say here that everything is possible in pathology and communism. Yeah, so now we can say only everything is possible in pathology. I think this is the last case. Thank you for attention. And see you in a week.